and more demos and resources for builders and examples of what has been built, what is needed still. And we'll finish off with some exciting news on what's going to happen for Berlin community and how we can support builders here. Marco, I will give it off to you now.
Yeah, hi. So as Misha said, I'm based in Berlin, and I'm the senior developer advocate currently for ParaWallet. If you have done anything with Algorand, you probably have had contact with the ParaWallet, greatest wallet in the world. If you have questions about it, come to me. I formerly was senior developer advocate at the Algorand Foundation, and that's my qualification actually to talk around Algorand topics still. I recognize a couple of the names here. And if you have never met me, like feel free to ping me up. I can progress myself. Very good.
Please.
Okay, so I want to give you an overview of x402, and I just realized I never heard anyone official like pronounce it. I will call it x402. Misha called it x402. Let me know if you find out what the official version is. So I want to give you an overview. You can call it x402 in a nutshell, or the TLDR version, so x402 for people in a hurry. Most of the things that I will say here will be explained in more detail later by Nikhil and by MG, who will do a theoretical and a practical deep dive into the topics respectively. And yeah, I just want to give you like a good feeling and like some idea or some point in the recording that's running where you can come back to and like quickly look things up. So what is x402? Most of you will have, oh wait, let's try something. I would like to try the hands showing feature. So you have this little button that looks like a hand at the bottom. When you click that, you will raise your hand, like you can see Misha and Gülşah have that. Can everyone who is currently able to do that, click that button to see if we can do this for like a show of hands style thing? That looks good. Okay. Very good. Okay, cool. Then hands down. Or there's a, Misha, you should have a button for hands down, I think.
I do have for, yes, I do have for lower all.
Yes. Okay, then this is easier than everyone having to click by themselves. So first question I have. So last time I gave a workshop at a coding school in Berlin called 42 Berlin. I asked the people in the room who I was totally sure are developers, if they're developers. Most of them said no. So I will ask you, are you writing code yourself? Like yourself includes AI. So who is producing code? Okay.
Yeah, we'll have 11 show hands of 11 from 37. So 1/3.
Okay, that's good. But most of you will know the web. And most of you will have heard or at least seen the HTTP protocol. So that's the basics of the web. When you run into a website that doesn't exist, you see an error code that is called HTTP 404, for example. I'm 100% sure that everyone here has run into this. Probably even every one of you has run into one of those today. And the error code x402 that says payment required is one of those error codes that you can have returned. However, in the specification, it states that this code is reserved for future use. So it was never implemented, and it was already baked into the original HTTP protocol from the 90s under the initiative of Mark Andreessen. Most of you, I assume, are like crypto curious or generally in the area of technology. So you might have heard of the VC firm Andreessen Horowitz, A16Z, and Mark Andreessen is the A9 of the A16. And he was one of the inventors of one of the earliest web browsers called Mosaic, and he pushed for this error code because he knew that if you don't bake a payment method into the very protocol, you would end up with something that no one wanted, which is advertisement everywhere. We all know how that worked out. So, and of course, as the HTTP protocol itself turns out over the decades now, over 30 years old, there is like a lot more that you can do with it than even anticipated back then. So with this 402 error code, we can also do a lot more. Until recently, there were only like a couple of like not so enthusiastic attempts to do something with this error code, but this error code was picked up by a couple of companies and now really makes tractions. One of these implementations that we are very convinced of is called x402, an initiative that was driven by Coinbase. And the idea is basically you send a request to your browser. That's I think on the next slide. Can I also go back? I don't know. So the idea is that you send a request to a server, and the server tells you, you're not allowed to see this unless you give me proof of payment. Then you initiate this proof of payment somehow. You have a receipt in a digital form, and this one you can return to the server, and server says, okay, here is your content. This is like the very, very high level overview of how this is supposed to work. However, you can do like so many things with that. I assume this was an accident, Meet. So I don't know how the others will handle that. I will ask you, only because we are so many, to save the questions for the end. Usually, like when I'm in the room with people, I want to like hear questions immediately, otherwise you might lose context. Today, please wait until the end, at least until the end of every section. So now we can do like a lot of things with this error code. We run into a couple of problems when we are applying traditional payment methods, for example. So what if you want to request a website that is not worth much, right? So some of you might run their own blog or so, and you know what you can earn from a page view that go into the thousands when you put like ads on your blog or something like this. And a website visit basically costs like a fraction of a penny. Now imagine you do the payment for that with traditional, let's call them traditional payment methods like credit cards or something like that. Last time I checked, you pay 2 to 3% commission on a credit card transaction. That might like be okay, but usually also a lump sum of like around 20 to 30 cents. The 2 to 3% might be okay, because it's like still just fractions of pennies. But if you do a transaction for fractions of pennies and you add 20 to 30 cents for this transaction, that just becomes prohibitively expensive. Like no one wants that, right? So hence, we are looking for infrastructure, payment rails that are capable of doing a lot of transactions very fast, very cheap. Enter blockchain. You might have heard that Algorand is a blockchain. This is probably why most of you are here. And we have a couple of things in the protocol. We will pick them up a couple of times during the presentation because they're so important that they need to be repeated over and over. So Algorand has a couple of things baked into the protocol itself, like the Algorand protocol, that makes Algorand like uniquely qualified, I would almost say, for these payment rails. So we have support for native tokens. You might have heard of ASA, Algorand Standard Assets. And we have instant finality. So if you are looking into how blockchains usually work, there is usually like a coordination effort between the nodes in the network that might like pile up to a couple of minutes on most blockchains, where they decide like how the next block should finally look like. There are methods how you can speed it up, how you can have like some kind of good enough settlement, but then you have to wait for like the real settlement later, and that for risky scenarios, that's not a feasible one. For Algorand, we have an instant finality. That means after the block time of around 2.8 seconds, I think it's at the moment, you can be sure that things cannot be rolled back. So you can be sure transaction is settled. Now, if you go to time spans that are that short, you can even include this in a synchronous call, in a call that is synchronous, not an asynchronous call. So when you request a resource from the server, it asks you to pay, you wait the block time, you give the receipt, you waited 3 seconds, and everything is done. That is for the synchronous case. For asynchronous cases, this can be even like more optimized. We have about 10K transactions per second throughput, so it makes us also very much well set up for high frequency scenarios. And we have something that is called atomic transaction groups. That means like if you know a little bit of databases, an atomic execution of something usually means either all or nothing is executed. That means when one of the transactions in this group fails, all the others will fail as well. And also on top of that, failed transactions don't incur fees on Algorand. That means if this fails, no harm done. You can just like try again when you have corrected whatever you have attempted. Next slide, please. Oh, this is exactly this concept. Sorry. Yeah, so you might have already played with that, and that actually allows for something super powerful. That is one of the concepts of x402, which is like fee sponsoring, something like that. We call it a fee delegation usually. That means the fee transaction can be paid by something that is called the facilitator. This was the first slide that I was skipping over. We will get back to that. Don't worry, you will not miss anything major when you don't see that. So you usually have the client that requests something from the server, and in the middle is something that the x402 protocol, one back, that the x402 protocol calls the facilitator. That's the thing that is responsible for settling and verifying the transaction on the blockchain in the background. The protocol itself describes it as an optional component, because you can imagine this can be handled in different ways. But for most crypto payment scenarios, this is actually like a very useful component that is also doing a couple of other things that he will explain to us a bit later. Okay, now we can move on. Yeah, this allows us to form this transaction group where we have the payment that you sign yourself or whatever is executing this call, because this is also a mechanism that is perfectly suited for agentic payments. So when an AI agent pays someone else, we will get to that in a second. And the fee transaction that comes with that is to be paid in Algo, the native currency on the Algorand blockchain, can be sponsored. So the transaction will be signed by the facilitator. That means you don't even have to have this algo yourself. The server will usually request you to pay in a currency that itself knows. This would be like US dollar, maybe represented by USDC. So the Circle stablecoin that represents like a digital version of the US dollar. But you don't have to have anything else than that. So you can basically pay in your native currency, don't have to bother with the things that are actually underlying that. Can we go to the next one? And yeah, these things make Algorand really one of the best choices to go and try to do something with the x402 protocol. And I specifically try to force myself to be very generic in describing what you can do with that, because this is early days. Like, people barely started experimenting what's possible with x402, and we will stress this in the end again. We actually hope that some of you have like a light bulb moment when we talk about that. So we have the instant finality, we have high frequency, we have atomic transaction groups that allow for an easy mechanism of the fee sponsoring mechanism. We have the Algorand standard assets. That means you don't need smart contracts or anything to manage your tokens, which you might need on other blockchains when you have a bit of experience there. And we also have the developer tooling for that. So we have smart contracts that you can use to do stuff under the hood. You don't have to, that you can write in Python and TypeScript. We have SDKs at the moment called the AlgoKit utils that you can use to work in any application written in one of those languages. There are community-operated projects that also support a number of other languages. We have live playgrounds, for example, for x402 that MG will demonstrate later. You have AlgoKit that I just mentioned, like basically the development environment for everything that contains a Dockerized like single node blockchain that can run on your computer. You have like tooling for anything you can imagine. We will a bit later look into agentic skills, something that we call VibeKit. We will also have a look at. The facilitator and the bazaar functionality will be presented by MG later, and we will also give you a bunch of info on additional events and resources. One more slide. So what are some of the problems that x402 actually solves? So you can monetize things without having accounts. Like imagine you want to request some resource somewhere, an API call, for example, for something. Usually you would have to have like either a subscription somewhere or at least an account to identify yourself against that, so that they also know who they can bill for something or where they can like pile up the traffic for something. When you now pay per request, that is not required. No accounts, no pre-set up. Like let's go wild on that. You can like connect this to an AI agent of your choice. Be careful with that. Don't. And that one can basically discover API functionalities, MCP servers, like things we will dig into again by itself. Doesn't need to set up anything and can just request resources and pay for them on the fly. Sounds amazing and scary at the same time, but as scary as this is, we already see that people want that, right? Like I think the fastest growing and by now the second most liked GitHub repository of all time is just a couple of months old, was renamed a couple of times. I will not name the name now, but go look it up and you will see what I mean. So people want that. And we will have to come up with a couple more things to make this really useful. But this year is one of the things that's definitely one of the most needed features for that. x402 can be used for native agent-to-agent payments. If you are looking into the agent or the AI space, you have probably seen something like A2A, the agent-to-agent protocol, ACP, the agent commerce protocol, AP2, the agent payment protocol. So a lot of TLAs, like three-letter acronyms that you have there. And you can see x402 in most of them as like the payment layer, because most of these protocols are based on HTTP. Then we have cross-border micropayments. So micropayments we talked about. You need something with very low fees to and high throughput to allow for micropayments. That is in cross-border financial scenarios. Of course, without the blockchain, I wouldn't know what to use, because like there are at least 4 different parties involved. If you use anything else, and they all have like latencies, some of them go into days. So maybe when you wire money somewhere overseas, it just disappears for a couple of days sometimes. And there's just like scenarios where that's not feasible to work with something like micropayments that need to be almost instant, basically. We have fee abstraction we talked about, and we have this like Web 2-like UX for Web 3 payments. That's basically meant so that a lot of those things can be automated. We have this fee delegation, so you don't even have to be fully aware what's happening like under the hood. You just see, okay, I'm supposed to pay in dollars. I have some digital dollar mechanism, and I can just use that. And yeah, that's essentially it. But those are a couple of the things from the top of our heads. Like we want to discuss later all the scenarios that like go through your head at this point. Next slide, please. And yeah. Those things we basically just covered, right? So we have the micropayments, agentic payments that can have overlap. There can be agentic micropayments. Pay per API call is basically also that. So you can pay per API from an agent to an agent. You can pay from any script to any other script that would be machine to machine. So you can come up with IoT scenarios for that. Pay as you go, we mentioned. So you don't have to have any subscriptions, not even accounts. You can really do what you want. You can identify yourself still against the system without like disclosing data in an unnecessary way. And subscriptions and renewals are an optional thing. We will dive several times again into examples where this can be used. And we hope that by the end, when we come to the open discussion, that you will come up with a couple of additional scenarios. Next slide, please. Okay, that's it. I hand over to Nikhil.
Marco,
thank you
very much. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Nikhil, please, it's your floor.
Sure. Thank you so much. With the kind of summary that, with the kind of overview that you've given, Marco, this is one thing that comes to my mind is what's going to happen in the future, right? People will say that I'm in control of my spending, and I've actually outsourced my spending to an agent, which actually has a better algorithm and a better taste than what I have. This is where we are going to be heading out to be. Welcome everyone. My name is Nikhil Verma. I'm based out of New Jersey. I work with the India team and of course the Algorand Foundation. And I'm really glad to be here today. This area is something which is of deep interest to me because my dissertation, my thesis was in the area which is called servitization, and servitization is all about sustainability and kind of infusing service into products. And when it came to my work on infusing small service products on online products, on online services rather, on in products, one of the biggest challenges that we was facing was, how do I kind of get payments for these services? So essentially, the whole concept of circular economy, where we would use small things. Of course, we are talking about agentic commerce here today, but just the whole genesis of this is that these micro payments, if have the ability to be able to make small payments without having an overhead cost, that was one of my overarching problems since 2016. Yes, I have nothing to do with the founding of this x402 protocol, but I would have loved to be a part of it. I'd never had that light bulb moment. So just to be able to give you some background, like, imagine yourself waking up in 2030. Yeah. And what's going to happen in 2030? Of course, it's not going to be, the world is not going to go upside down, but we would all have lots of agents doing all kinds of things for us. In fact, as a professor, when I give talks to my students, most of the people they ask me is, Professor, what are we going to be working on in the future? And my answer is, I don't know. You will actually be having agents who will be doing work for you. There would be certain things. There is a human in the loop aspect that you would possibly have. The next slide, please. So just to be able to understand how this whole agentic commerce comes into play, or what are the different layers of agentic commerce that I see, there are three different stratas, that are three distinct layers from what I view this as. One is the intent layer, which is basically the human to the agent layer. Essentially, this is where the human kind of presents their desire to be able to do something. And then that desire gets translated into some kind of an actionable goal. Yeah. Underneath that, or the next layer, which we would have in agentic commerce, is what Marco was talking about in the TLAs, the different TLAs that we're hearing of, is that agent to agent layer. Yeah, this is where autonomous entities, they would negotiate things. So essentially, if I have a car, electric car with a smart car, it would be able to negotiate access to certain part of the road. This is the whole idea of smart cities that is coming up, where you would be able to get access to a faster route by giving away some tokens. So your smart car will negotiate certain things based on your particular calendar. Now, this is not sci-fi movie. This is what is going to be happening. And the next one is the agent to machine layer. Okay. And in this agent to machine layer, there is direct interaction with the physical or digital world, where the payment are executed without human intervention. Again, there is there is some degree of autonomous aspect that is set into this. The next slide, please. Now, just kind of drilling down in each one of them very quickly, not taking too much time since I've already presented it to you. A simple example of a human to agent framework would be you ordering tickets. Yeah, this is something that we all can relate to. You have maybe a concert ticket. Yeah, and your agent will go and kind of look at multiple marketplaces, verify your budget, look at what are your likes and dislikes. Okay, and then come back and actually make a deal and come back and tell you, yes, I made a deal for you. Of course, there could be a human in a loop design, where there could be things like, okay, if my budget is 200, what if it's 205? Yeah, or if I'm not getting the kind of seating that I want, you could build a human in the loop. Again, I'm not talking about agentic AI. I'm just trying to present the different kinds of scenarios that could happen here. Essentially, there is an economic transaction. This is not a chatbot that we're talking about. This is an economic actor. The agent is an economic actor acting on your behalf. It has to do payments. It has to do transactions in milliseconds. Next slide, please. Now, when we talk about the next layer, which is an agent-to-agent layer, yeah, this could be a travel agent or any kind of an agent that you're looking for, which is going to see how the weather is going to be where you're going to be going. Yeah, so your travel agent API is going to kind of find out, like, I want to go to a certain part of the world. Is it going to be rainy season, or what is the forecast of that particular in that area? Now, you could have different kinds of IoT devices that could be feeding into this agentic framework, but that would require me to kind of do a negotiation with that particular interface. And that interface says, you'll have to pay for 10,000 calls. You have to pay in bulk, yeah, and some kind of a transaction has to happen to be able to do that, to be able to kind of give me access to that kind of a data set. So over here, API is no longer an interface as what most programmers used to do back in those days when we used to kind of define APIs. It's just an interface, but it is an economic endpoint. There is some big difference in terminologies, in the way things are going to happen, the way the commerce is going to be happening because of how agents are going to be set up. So the next slide, please. Now, over here is a scenario which is where you have a delivery drone, which is very much going to be a reality. In fact, transportation drones are also being discussed at this point of time. Now, this delivery drone is losing battery, yeah, and goes to a charging station and autonomously finds the cheapest charging station, or whatever, the most optimal charging station where it has to go to, and it charges and it pays for its own charging. This requires no human approval. There are no monthly invoices, and there is just autonomous survival. So essentially, this system kind of is self-running. Now, why I'm giving you these different views is to be able to give you an idea of how things would progress, right? We will be able to kind of, when you are looking at agents or agent-to-agent commerce, agent-to-human commerce, human-to-agent commerce, agent-to-machine commerce, these are different kinds of interfaces where these transactions, these financial transactions will happen. The next slide, please. Just to be able to give you the scale of transaction, and that is quite, I would say, kind of, I was quite surprised when I looked at those numbers. But this number is almost going to rival the GDP of nations, right? I mean, it's kind of, the projection is that it would probably be more than the GDP of China, and it's almost compared to the GDP of United States, which is huge. That is the amount of transactions that would be happening, and we need to have some kind of a mechanism, some kind of of course, there is other things that also come in over here. We're just talking about commerce. We're not talking about security and other things, cyber security. How can we maintain privacy? All these things would be other things that would be developing alongside this. But one thing is, how do we kind of make this economic transaction seamless? How does this economic transaction happen in such a manner that, there is no overhead on the system? So let's go to the next slide, please, and let's come back to 2026. And in 2026, the reality is, of course, we are talking about x402, but the reality is that we've built systems, right, which are where there is a protocol gap. The reality is that most of our systems are built taking into consideration of humans. We have people, we have cards, we have invoices, we have banks. But the vision where we want to head to is agents, APIs, servers, and instant transaction. So essentially, there seems to be a protocol gap which exists in the current times. And this protocol gap is what, as developers, as people who would be building solutions for the future, we have to start building an infrastructure. We have to start building around that infrastructure to be able to make sure that this protocol gap that we have currently is minimized, is no longer there. And what does this create? This protocol gap create? The next slide, please. This protocol gap creates something which is called an induction problem. So the induction problem, as I mentioned, is like, the way you induct people, how do you kind of recruit people? How do you get people? How do you interact with people? They have their KYC forms, you have passports, you have bank accounts, you have signatures. Somehow, some countries have started using digital signatures, but we still, in many places, we have wet signatures. You have to sign on paper. You have utility bills. Yeah, agents can't do that. And agents don't have that kind of a setup to be able to verify, to be able to wait for 3 days for verification, right? They operate in milliseconds. We have to have some kind of a mechanism to be able to build all these things in such a manner that this protocol problem, which is creating this induction issue of agents, right? So, I mean, Marco talked about how all these transactions happen, but if tomorrow we say we want to bring in a new agent into an ecosystem to be able to do some kind of transaction. Suppose we want to build an agentic framework for a travel company. What all things would that travel company need to be able to make that agent system going? Next slide, please. So essentially, we have all the hardware, okay? We have AI, we have global outreach, but what is the key problem over here is that we are all driving a Ferrari, but actually we have put a Ferrari engine in a bullock cart. That's like a bizarre analogy. That's the most bizarre analogy that I could think of. Sorry about that. But yeah, I didn't want to put a German car engine into a bullock cart here just because my audience was in Berlin. But maybe when I speak in Italy, I'll use a different example. So over here, the idea is that we're still stuck in the 70s because the settlement process, and Marco did mention about it. When you send money or you have any kind of transaction, it takes some time to settle. There is the scalability has a manual review process. The induction is a problem. So all these things, the rails that we have is still very old. Can we go to the next slide, please? So I just want to come back, and this was very nicely addressed already, just to come back to 1991, which is where the birth of HTTP was. And the key idea was that the internet would speak the common language. Essentially, we would all have a common language. We would have the fundamental verbs, and the responses of the web would be consistent, right? A GET request and a 200 OK laid the foundation of everything that we do online today. Can we go to the next slide? So just to quickly I don't mean to bore you with so many things in history, but it's good to know that, the language of the web, these were not just numbers, they had some meaning. Okay, there was every category from 1xx to 5xx, have some kind of a bearing, some kind of a meaning. 1xx is informational and so on and so forth. But one code which was already introduced to you, next slide, please, was the foresight, which I think kind of has been reserved since 1991. It's a placeholder, which is payment required. And as was mentioned, I think that this was that, to be able to handle native payments, digitally, that was probably the idea, but that was the idea rather. But at that point of time, the technology did not exist, right? And this was a sleeping giant for good 32 years. The next slide, please. So one of the reasons why this slept, this 402 was not kind of functional for that long period of time, is this whole example which we have is, and I started out with my experience in servitization and sustainability and circular economy. But when you talk about this whole construct of micro payments, or I think these are not even micro payments, these are nano payments, so even smaller than $1. Yeah. that is where these digital systems don't have the means to be able to be doing one transaction each time. Yeah, I can give, say, I can send $100 to somebody's wallet, and that person can keep deducting 1 cent every time I use something. But then my $100 is locked there. Yeah. And that transaction is done based on economies of scale because I'm sending $100 one time. So the transaction cost and other things, that overhead is kind of countered by that. But what if there is a huge marketplace and I have a huge choice of things? What if that I don't want to get locked in 100 places, right? What if that, every time I want to have a choice of where I want to do a transaction? This is where that, the problem arises, because the transaction overhead kind of is the defeating purpose when it comes to this micropayment issue. And that's in when in 20 the next slide please. In 2024, of course, Coinbase led this whole thing, but I would say that there was a bit of a work done from Cloudflare Flare's side also. So Coinbase became the bank and Cloudflare became the network. They conceived this idea of 402 to wake up this sleeping giant and look at a new standard to define machine payments. How do we kind of make these machine micropayments? The next slide, please. So just at a very high level, of course, the demonstration was done already, but I just want to make sure we just kind of show it one more time. Is the way the x402 works is kind of creating a standardized conversation for value exchange. Okay. Essentially what happens is whenever a service request is done using the get, you get ask for a resource, then the server sends out a payment request. And once the payment request is sent out, then the client or the agent sends out a proof of the payment, that yeah, I have made a payment. This is how this is what is the payment, and then finally it sends a 200. Okay, so this is the sequence of steps to be able to do a value exchange. Now, what value we are exchanging over here depends on the kind of agent. It could be a data stream, it could be an access, it could be asking it to do a particular transaction for you, or so on and so forth. Yeah. The next slide, please. So just to reiterate, yeah, just in a very simple way, yeah, if you have a service which is a bundle service, yeah, you have a monthly subscription, you have to sign up and pay it from your credit card, and but essentially you're using just 5% of that service. This is one thing which whenever I give a talk on resource utilization and efficiencies and productivity of countries, nations, what impacts the GDP, yeah, the one important aspect is how is our resource utilized. And that was the whole basis of us coming back to economies where we could build things where resource utilization is maximized. This has a similar kind of perspective over here. Instead of a resource utilization on a perspective, it gives you this whole idea of democratic and choice, as well as being free from being locked down with someone, right? This is the whole traditional view of marketing, that okay, if they buy something, give them something else, and they give something else, and then they're stuck with us because the changeover cost is very high. Not that agents wants to do that, but in the whole view over here is that we are doing different kinds of transaction, as I showed you this at the 3 different levels. Yeah, these different kinds of transactions would be done by a whole myriad of different kinds of agents that are out there. And if there are different kinds of agents out there, how can you have a bundle service, right? So basically, I have to have something where I will be able to do pay per stream. There is almost a zero barrier to be able to connect with people. They're already verified, they're already set up. and pay for a small unit rather than buy in bulk. The next slide, please. Now, all this is all good. Yeah, this whole thing is all good. But then with x402, there are a few things that we need to understand. It's the x402 essentially defines the language. But how do you ask for the payment? Yeah, where is the payment coming from? We still face a plumbing problem. Essentially, the problem is the settlement. Yeah, the settlement is where the actual value transfer happens, right? So if you have a payment request and I say, yeah, here you go, you'll say, okay, but where will I get my money? Yeah, and how long will it take me to get that money? Yeah, so that's the plumbing problem, which the x402. I mean, of course, x402 eventually kind of, as I discuss this, you will see how this whole thing kind of in a few slides you'll be able to see how this whole thing works out. So the next slide, please. So to be able to solve this plumbing problem, we need something which is a financial backbone, right? What does this financial backbone actually does is it does a real-time settlement. Okay, and the real-time settlement should have speed. Okay, very fast speed. It has to have a low cost, and it has to be final. Yeah. Now over here I've put in some items with the compatibility check. So if you look at credit cards, yeah, there is a cost factor which fails. If you have Swift, there is a cost factor with Bitcoin. There is a cost factor and speed factor with Ethereum. There is a speed factor and a finality factor. So each one of these that you see over here is actually having something or the other problem. But again, just let's go back to go to the next slide, please. But just to be able to solve the settlement problem, yeah, we need something which is digitally native, yeah, and blockchain. And this actually, in Marvel world, people say the end game is IoT, AI, and blockchain. That's when you get into end game. So essentially, this is where we are getting into end game. The blockchain is the perfect answer for because it is a digital native, right? And it is able to kind of create all that particular plumbing problem that we see when it comes to how do we kind of do all these fast transactions to be able to provide that infrastructure for agents to be able to do transactions. Next slide, please. Now, of course, we all work for Algorand, and it's kind of understandable when we say, yeah, Algorand is the best chain. But to be able to kind of substantiate it with actual data, one of the things that is important to understand is that blockchain is definitely a good digital native, but most blockchain platforms do not have that ability to be able to provide those three different things that I talked about, which is speed, finality, and cost, right? So Algorand definitely checks the box when it comes to the speed. Okay, of course, I just got to know it. We've got every time I make this slide and the block time gets reduced by another fraction of seconds, I just got to know it's 2.8 instead of 3.3. There is instant finality. This is a very crucial aspect in blockchain, and this instant finality is actually facilitated because of the consensus mechanism that we have. And of course, the cost factor to do transaction is fractions on the penny. So essentially, there is no overhead when you're running these transactions. Now, I've just put these three over here. However, we need to also take into account a few other things. Okay, and fingers crossed, of course, but Algorand has had a zero downtime. This is one critical aspect when we talk about agentic commerce. The other thing also, which is very important when we talk about a blockchain platform, and especially about the kind of things that are happening with, ChatGPT and the carbon footprint and the energy consumption, to be able to have a platform, to be able to do things in a platform on a platform which is carbon negative, also gives you an edge when it comes to building applications. So Algorand is a carbon negative blockchain platform. And of course, with quantum coming into picture very soon, or sooner than what we are anticipating, because there's a lot of work being done in that space. Algorand, of course, we can't say anything is quantum safe, but we are quantum ready. That's one of the things which makes it just not another blockchain, but the blockchain for the future of finance. Blockchain where x402 transactions, applications that would use x402 would be an ideal place. And it kind of checks all the boxes. And that's why we've kind of have had the Coinbase plumbing, which kind of, the next slide, please. That's why we had the Coinbase plumbing. So just to be able to make people understand what are we doing with Coinbase here. So essentially, Algorand provides that instant settlement with USDC on Algo. And Coinbase handles the essential compliance, essentially in the back end, the KYC, the AML, the auto conversion to fiat, the custody, every single thing is done through the Coinbase system, which means this gives it a more scalable perspective. Yeah, it gives you to be able to kind of, I can pay you in USDC, but you can get it in euros, or you can get a payment in euros at the end. Yeah, because of that whole Coinbase. And then there is a KYC and compliance and other things which are already built in, which kind of makes it super powerful. Just very quickly, just to be able to kind of show you what this integration actually means. Yeah, or whenever you're doing any kind of a transaction. Yeah. So essentially, I just went to charge my electric car in a place the other day, and I was seeing the electric rate come onto my phone, in my phone, and then it charged my credit card. What is going to happen over here is that, of course, that is not a micro payment, but assume that I had an agent which was going to find something cheaper for me and then negotiate a rate based on something else. What is going to happen over here is that the invoice would be a transaction instruction. Okay, it would no longer be a document. It would be a direct command. It will be a transaction record on chain on the platform. So that's going to be a big difference between traditional invoicing as compared to instant on-chain settlement. Now, some people would say that, x402 is protocol standard. Why don't we all implement it in our own chains and go with that, right? And it's absolutely possible. It's absolutely possible that you could build x402 yourself. Sorry, MG. I didn't mean to take the integration away from you, but yes, you can build x402 in each of your protocols, but there would be a problem. The problem would be that this fragmented liquidity would be something which would cause lots of issues when you are trying to do settlement. You would have slippages. You would not be able to do various transactions across agents to agents, which are probably doing different, which are taking different payment modes. So the idea to have a global pool, actually a unified liquidity, creates something which is a flywheel. The next slide, please. So this powerful flywheel effect is, what actually this would kind of facilitate or create is that you would be able to make more and more agents which would be able to take more micro payments. The volume would, the number of agents that come on would add more liquidity. The more liquidity that we have, we will have less slippage, we'll have more gravity, and this kind of keeps growing. That's the whole idea, that we will be able to create a whole flywheel of things because of this global machine pool. And that's what we are very excited about. That's what we think is going to be kind of encouraging developers to build more and more solutions using x402 on our chain. The next slide, please. Now, of course, Marco had highlighted quite a few interesting things. This is just a broad categories of things that I have put together that would be very interesting. I'm saying applications that we need, not we as Algorand, application as what is needed in this system to be able to help agentic commerce. So agentic wallets, agentic wallets to be able to facilitate, bots doing transaction. How can they make payments? Resource gateways, like, the Stripe, say, like something like a Stripe for APIs, yeah. Turning standard services into metered x402 compliant offerings. Yeah, you could have discovery protocols. This is very important, right? Uh, uh, at some point of time, when you have agent to agent or human to agent, we will have a marketplace of multiple agents, and this is already happening to many of you, I'm pretty sure. Uh, which agent do I choose? Right? Which agent is going to give me that response in real time? What is the quality of service of the agent? What is the response time? What is the history of the agent? So that kind of also builds into that whole reputation system. So there are a lot of things that would be facilitated, not necessarily by X402, not necessarily using X402, but around X402, because if you are, see, I use interchangeably X402 and X402 because X402, actually, just to answer your question, Marco, is in mostly the computer people would use the programmers would use 402, but the business people use 402 because I'm a professor in a business school, but a computer engineer in my previous life, so I use them interchangeably. Just discovery and reputation systems are going to be very key for this whole flywheel that I was talking about, and it's very important that I encourage all of you over here to be able to have a look at that, those kind of solutions also. Yes, you will leverage X402, but when I'm doing a transaction, I need some kind of a yellow page, some kind of an index. Okay, where do I go? Which agent do I work with? Yeah, which agent do I do transactions with? Yeah. So the next slide, yes. So essentially, how does the stack look like? Okay, this is at a layer one. We have provided at layer one, Algorand provides the settlement with USDC, algo, atomic transfers, and smart contracts. In layer two is the X402 protocol itself. In layer three, you have the services, infrastructure, wallet, identity, reputation, discovery. And at layer four, we have applications which have agent marketplaces, autonomous agents, data swarms, and compute grids. Yeah, this is the complete architecture for the agent economy. And the next slide, please. Just to kind of reiterate or kind of encourage all of you is that we've laid the groundwork. And after you see MJ's presentation and MJ's that application, you will be able to in fact SDK, if I use the right term, you will be able to build applications. You will be able to leverage X402 payments in different kinds of agentic scenarios. Yeah, so essentially what we are saying is that we've laid the groundwork of this whole robust infrastructure, and now it's your turn to step into this revolution. Essentially, we build the rails, now you have to build the trains. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nikhil Varma. MJ, the floor is yours, and actually I put you as a co-presenter, so you can also move the slides, so it may be a bit easier. So please.
Hello, everyone. My name is MG. I'm the co-founder of GoPlausible, and GoPlausible, together with Algorand Foundation, we have been working hand to hand for the past 8 months in order to bring everything necessary from the exact spec, the specification for the X402, which has been merged into the actual repository of Coinbase, which officially makes Algorand one of the few completely supported blockchains for X402 protocol, and also creating the everything necessary and essential for any developer, for any taste and any flavor, to get up and running and started with X402 and developing different amazing applications, whether it is clients, servers, or facilitators, to completely give them a go and make it easy and convenient for every developer to get started with this. So without any further ado, let's jump. Now that we know about all the what, thanks to my colleagues, Marco and Nikhil, for beautiful presentation. Now, every and each one of you has a clear understanding of what and what is X402 and what is it good for, what problems does it solve. And now is the time to jump into the how question. And let me just give you a very brief overview from more technical perspective, since the definitions and philosophical perspective have been covered completely and perfectly by my colleagues. First of all, there are three different, let's say, actors involved in any payment flow based on x402 protocol. One of them is what we are used to know, a server, which has something, some resource, which is protected, and the server wishes, the merchant behind that server, who owns that server, wishes to protect it and receive payments for it. This is the whole story. We have something, we have some resource that we need some payment for it in order to be delivered to the end user who is requesting it. And first of all, we need a server, which we call resource server. And this resource server has two main jobs. Number one, protect those resources and give the x402 status code, HTTPS status code for every and each one of them based on each request that comes for that resource. And also, when the response from the end client or end user comes with the valid transactions, which is the actual response to that payment required status, which we earlier sent to the end user, then communicate with the facilitator, which is an instance which is responsible to check these transactions. And if they are okay, if everything is cool and okay, then settles them based on the associated blockchain, which is the actual layer, the actual payment rails behind everything. And after the settlement, acknowledges the settlement, the finality of the settlement to the resource server and say, hey, I just received the payment settlement for the transaction, payment is done, feel free to give the resource and deliver it to the end user. This is the actual two main jobs of the resource server. And so as you see in the diagram, the duty of the merchant actor, which usually is done by the administrators of that resource server on behalf of the owner or the merchant, is to configure how are we going to receive these payments, which currencies are we going to receive, which is usually stable coins, and based on which blockchains are we going to receive those payments, which blockchains are we going to support for those payments. So these configurations are provided by the merchant into the resource server, and these will construct a JSON object, which is somehow attached to that x402 payment required response, which is sent back to the client when the protected resource is requested by that user or end user. That is called payment requirements. These payment requirements are easily contained how that payment is going to be constructed, which transactions, by which currency, and targeting which blockchain. This is simply called payment requirements. And these are the configurations that merchant actor or administrators put into the resource server, and the resource server, based on those configurations, responds to any request that comes for that protected resource and says, hey, if you want this resource, you need to provide this amount of this currency in this right on this blockchain. And the end user, which we call the client on behalf of the end user, the client application, which is requesting this, will construct those transactions exactly and identically based on the requirements and the manifest, which is coming by payment requirements, and send it back to the resource server, which in turn will be communicated with the facilitator to be verified and settled. And when everything is cool, the resource would be delivered. A few words about the channels. The channels for x402 are completely a vast variety of choices. Actually, we can say everything that is available to be communicated on web can be a channel to implement x402 for. Here are some examples. You can have the web content, a URL which you wish to protect on your resource server. You may have some API, which all of the API or some selective endpoints of that API can be protected, so you request payments for them. Or maybe you have on some sub-level some ABI, which is completely protected, or has some protected methods that you wish to get paid in order to deliver them to the end user. You can use it for the MCPs, which can again, be completely protected from the beginning, or have some specific tools that are protected by x402. And finally, it can be one agent communicating through agent-to-agent protocol, which has either completely been protected or have some subset of the skills which are protected by x402. So there is a complete variety of things that the resource server can use the x402 protocol for in order to get paid to deliver that resource or deliver that service. Then we come to the client, which is the actual entity which requests the application or the code, which is actually constructing those requests based on the manifest coming from the x402 resource server. And during the response to the request of that protected resource, the response which comes with the HTTP status code of 402, these payment requirements then will be used by this client code, which we call x402 oriented clients or x402 integrated clients, to construct the correct transactions and send them to resource server in order to be processed. Again, for the clients as well as the servers, the completely different channels and different technologies are completely available in order to be used to construct those transactions and communicate them to the resource server. It depends on which channel is being used by the client and the resource server initially in order to request for that protected resource. Therefore, that channel will be used to communicate back the 402 status code, and also to be for the transactions which are constructed by the client based on manifest of the payment requirements to be sent back to the resource server. So again, you see different HTTP-based clients which are available. And here I just named some of the very famous client frameworks for HTTP communications and for HTTP request compilations, which is for TypeScript, the fetch API, the Axios library, which I think the majority of developers are using one of these two in order to construct the request when it comes to HTTP requests. And also from the Python side, you can use very well-known and famous clients such as HTTPX or request library, or on both of these programming languages, you can use, as I will demonstrate for you, you can use your own custom wrapped client using the facilities and methods and libraries provided by SDKs coming from the complete and comprehensive x402 utility sets provided by Algorand, and also some subsets of these are completely available for other chains as well. But for Algorand, we made sure, together with Algorand Foundation, we made sure that everything that any developer by any flavor on Python or TypeScript needs to get up and running with those should be available and is available for them to use it easily and in a convenient way. Again, here, as you see, the channels are HTTP channel, MCP, or A2A, which means the client can be a simple HTTP client, which we mentioned some very famous clients for you to use to construct those x402-oriented requests. And also it can be an MCP client, which communicates with an MCP server, and in between, when it requests for some payment-protected or x402-protected resource or tool set on that MCP server, it immediately pays for it. Therefore, it receives the service, service right after the payment is being made, verified, and settled. And also, it can be, again, another agent which is communicating with another agent, and right in the between, or for using some skills or capabilities of the target agent. Maybe the target agent requests for some payments, and therefore x402 kicks in, and the communication flow would be completed. The payment will be made by the agent, the source agent, and therefore the resource would be available. In this case, resource is a skill or a capability which is provided by target agent. And finally, the facilitator, which is comparably more complex than the other two, and is not expected from the developers to provide themselves for the merchants, merchant developers, or developers who work for the merchant, it is essential to make their resource servers x402 oriented. It is a very simple job. I will demonstrate it for you because it is available for every as middlewares for every famous or well-known server framework which exists out there. For example, Express, Hono, Next.js, you name it. And for the client as well, we have provided the client SDKs, which makes x402 construction very easy, no matter which client you use, or even if you use a custom code in order to make your HTTP calls. But for the facilitator, which is a little bit, not a lot, a little bit more complex, you don't need to create your own facilitator if you're a merchant and have a resource server, because there are facilitator services and servers out there which you can use however you desire. One of the most famous ones and the first facilitator ever was the Coinbase facilitator, which is available mostly for EVM chains and EVM-based transactions. Algorand has its own dedicated facilitator, which happens to have a complete support for multi-chain. It supports Algorand mainnet, testnet, Solana DevNet, Solana mainnet, and base for the base Ethereum and for the base Sepolia Ethereum, which is the testnet for the base. So it completely supports the EVM chains, the Solana and the Algorand, both on testnet and the mainnet. So you don't need to worry about the facilitator, but just to have a brief explanation about what is it and what does it do, the facilitator has three main responsibilities. Number one is to receive after receiving the transactions provided by the end client, the x402-oriented client, which is sent to the resource server will send them to facilitator, and the facilitator will verify everything that is needed to be verified, security-wise, balance-wise, everything, you name it. It verifies the payment transactions to be correct, to be okay, to be legit. And when they are verified and the facilitator checks them by every aspect, then tries to settle them on chain. Maybe you have a question, why not doing it in two separated sessions just for security reasons? Because if there are some malicious things, for example, a transaction has a note which seems to be malicious, or a transaction has some combination of other transactions, because some blockchains such as Algorand support transaction groups, maybe there is a very malicious and fishy or suspicious transaction in between. For example, a transaction with close amount to a transaction which closes the target amount into some other account. These things should be checked just before we send the actual transaction for settlement and make it final. So after verification, the second job that facilitator does is settlement. After everything is clear, the green light is good, the verification result is good, status 200, and the facilitator tries to settle these transactions and sends them to blockchain and receive the response after the finality. Thanks a lot. Algorand is very fast, as you will see in my demo on a finality. It is considered instant finality, and given the actual characteristics of Algorand, which doesn't have any failed transaction, doesn't have any fork transaction, all those stories for other blockchains, when you receive the sub 3-second finality of your transaction for settlement, it is done. The merchant received and is paid, actually is guaranteed, it's paid, they can verify it, and you have paid. This can be verified as well. So everything is cool, everybody's happy, and the transaction flow can complete and resource can be delivered. Finally, verification, settlement is done per transaction. What is needed is a discovery layer and discovery service, which every merchant or provider or resource server can be known to it, so that when any client is looking for something, they can immediately look into discovery directory and say, okay, hey, you're looking for a merchant who sells Nike shoes, you're looking for a merchant who sells computer hardware, these are the list of those who sell Nike shoes, these are the list of those who sell computer hardware. Feel free to compare them, feel free to see the specification or bonuses or prices, whatever there are, and then choose the one you want to make the actual purchase from. This discovery layer is called Bazaar because it is actually a bazaar. There is a big directory of every facilitator, every resource server, every merchant, and everything that you need to be aware of before you make your own purchase as some end user who wishes to access some resource or wishes to obtain some resources. Bazaar is there on every facilitator so that the end user or the clients, before they actually go for the payments or go for paying an actual merchant, they can find out which services are out there, which payment methods they are supporting. Is it good for me to pay in, for example, USDC on Solana, or is it good for me? There is another merchant who supports paying in, for example, USDC on Algorand. I have USDC on Algorand, so it is better for me. These comparisons and these finding of the right choice for you to make your own final move and make your purchase and receive your resource are done by the Bazaar. So Bazaar is simply a discovery layers and discovery APIs which clients can actually query before they go for the actual payment flow and the purchase. And again, as the for the client and for the resource server, all of the channels which are supported by resource server and by the clients are supported here as well. Usually, you should be able to find the facilitators available on for an API form with endpoints, which is the most common form of the facilitators available right now. You can have them in MCP format. You can have them as an agent who does the facilitation for you using the A2A, or for the low-level communications and IoT cases and the on-chain cases, it may be an ABI with some methods that provide the actual communication and verification and settlement for you, or some methods which deliver the results of the queries when they are done on-chain by, for example, another smart contract, and gives, for example, which merchants do you have and each how much each one of them are charging as payments or as the fees. Something like that, they are provided by all and each one of these channels because they are supported, they are the main supported channels for x402 protocol. Now, finally, we explained about the Bazaar, the usual discovery endpoints, which are available in the standard implementation of Bazaar from the Coinbase specification, which you have put in use for implementation of Algorand dedicated facilitator as well. Number one is to query for agents. So the discovery agents endpoint, it gives you all of the agents if there are agents communicating with A2A and have the agent card and are some either providing the merchant service for the resource servers or even providing the facilitator role. You can have an index of those, or the merchants. This is the most common form of the for the querying of the Bazaar, which merchants are available for this specific product. Searching for merchants, or you can search for resources, which resources, the complete list of resources which are made available by those merchants for this x402 facilitator, so we can query them and find which one do you desire best to make it the actual purchase from, and which payment methods, because it's important. Maybe you have USDC on some blockchain and not on some other blockchain, so you will find which payment methods are completely available for you so that you can make a choice how to proceed. And finally, because the Bazaar has been intended to be a completely interconnected ecosystem for other facilitators to be registered on other facilitators, this possibility is also available and is supported by this specification, so that when some other facilitator communicates and registers itself on some other facilitator, they are available in each other's Bazaar list and should be completely visible to the users of the other facilitators' Bazaar. Okay, now let's go for what is available for you as a builder. So whether you are a TypeScript builder or a Python builder, The complete sets of packages, as you can see here, I don't name them again, are available for you. All you need to do is scan this QR code and you will be taken to a URL which gives you the complete, which is exhaustive actually, index of all of the packages available, either on right on NPM directory or on right on PyPy directory. You can access them and choose your flavor of packages depending on which framework you are more savvy with as a developer, and get them to use, or tell your agent to pick from it depending on the programming language you're getting your agent to work with. So scan this QR code, you will have the complete list of everything. If you have scanned it, I hope you have all scanned it and you have passed with your hands and QR code scanning. Let's go to the next one. For the examples, we intentionally spend a lot of time to make sure everything you need in terms of either example code or example ready-to-use template packages are available for you either in TypeScript or Python, so that no matter how you prefer to approach this, either reading some example code and then get to the worst, or using prepared packages, custom packages, example packages for you, they're available. Again, all you need to do is scanning this QR code and it will take you to the actual GitHub repository, which all of those documentation and examples code will be available for you. So please feel free to scan this QR code if you want to go there and find out what is available for you. And regarding the facilitator, scanning this QR code will take you to the API documentations of Algorand dedicated facilitator, which I think I will share my screen. This is the, right after this slide, I will share my screen and give you some overview of API docs for Algorand facilitator, but feel free to scan this one and it will take you to API docs of Algorand dedicated facilitator. Very shortly, again, all the Algorand facilitator is not only for Algorand, it supports both testnets and mainnets of Solana and base Ethereum. So complete coverage for all supported blockchains for x402 are there. And finally, the playground, if you want to first test the waters and then some will get wet with the actual coding, here's the playground. You can go there. There are two very definitive examples, one protected web content and one protected API. Simply, you can connect your Algorand wallet. It's a web interface and pay for the stuff, and very minimal pay on testnets. Both of them are testnets, so no worries, you're not going to lose money. And there you will be delivered the actual resource. And if you open your dev tools and console logs, you can actually see the payment requirements coming from the status code of 402 and see what's going on and what happens during this operation when you are doing the actual x402 flow. And okay, so before we go to the next one, I will share my screen to give you a very quick demo of how can you use the actual repositories we provided for you and make a very quick example of how things work. Let me share my screen. And then entire screen, yes, please. And go here and this one. Okay, I hope you see my screen now. First of all, let me just give you a very brief and some brief overview about how easy it is for you as a developer or coder to get x402 into work. As I mentioned, all you need to care about if you're a merchant with a resource server that you want to implement x402 for, there are two steps for any kind of server for implementing the x402, two actually one-liners. Number one is to wrap the x402, wrap your server component within the x402. So your resource server will be wrapped into x402 support. It will add it, every component and every function needed for your server to be able to communicate with the facilitator, receive the requests from the clients, and gives back the payment requirements in answer to a protected resource request from the client. So a one-liner, which is wrapping your server inside the SDK of X402 which is provided for you for sure. And very simply, in that one-liner code, you will actually tell this during this wrapping, you will tell the code which exact specifications, very simply, which blockchain are you going to be supporting for your X402. So this is the first one-liner. I made them highlighted here, and you can see the comment over here. And second step would be adding that wrapped middleware, ready-to-use middleware into your actual server, which happens next. For example, here, because our application for this example is Hono, which is a TypeScript framework for the servers. You see that we add that wrapped middleware into a Hono backend, and therefore, for that route or that for that endpoint on Hono, it is supported. This is all you need to do to make your resource server support X402. And for the client side as well, it is very simple. First of all, creating an X402 client, this one-liner here, as you see, using the SDKs which are provided for you. Number two, again, register the networks you're going to support, either on the Algorand or here in this example, I support the EVM and SVM for Solana and Ethereum, and then create a wrapped client, which is, again, supporting everything that the X402 client brings for you and the registered network that you already registered. And the last step, make the request using that wrapped client. So 4 lines for any client, 2 lines for any server, and because the facilitator is already provided for you, you don't need to somehow worry about the facilitator. All you need to worry about as developers is providing the client and providing the servers. And finally, to put a very happy ending to that, let me show how it works. I just create a local facilitator just for you to see what is going on. You can use the online facilitator we provided for you. Just here for the sake of logging, I want to show you what happens before and after the verification and settlement on facilitator. And here we use the Hono server. Again, I running my server listing on port 4021. And for the client, I use the fetch client, which is the most widely used client out there. And let's see what happens if I make an X402 request. As you saw, that is how fast Algorand works. It actually is, most of all, is actually sub-second, but when it's totally congested, with everything goes wrong, it is 2.8 seconds. This is the top length of the time it takes for Algorand to actually fix in place. Here in the logs, as you see, the facilitator received the payments, which has been sent by the client on the right side to the server on the middle, and the server communicated them to the to facilitator, and facilitator first verifies it. And here's the verification. Before verify, these are the transactions. And after verification, this is the result of verification. Okay, everything is cool. The payment transaction is here. The unsigned fee abstraction transactions are here. And the settlement here, the result for the settlement, before settlement and after settlement are logged, which says everything has been taken care of. The transaction has been simulated and everything is cool. Now resource server, let's deliver the protected resource, which in this case you see here is the weather endpoint, and the result, weather is sunny and temperature is 70 degrees Fahrenheit, which with Algorand, this is always how the weather is. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening, and I will disconnect my sharing and deliver the stage to my colleague. Thank you so much.
MJ, thank you very much. That was a really cool presentation. Gulcha, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, actually,
no, agency goes. I'm not gonna go first.
Yes. I think let's leave this to Marco.
So I will spare you the demonstration. This is mostly for all the developers here. I'm not a co-presenter anymore. Can you progress one?
Yes, I will put you as a presenter actually now.
So
you are.
If you are a developer, unless you live under a rock, you will have had contact of some form with agents, right? So can I have a hands up for everyone, actually, not only the developers, if you have used or at least heard of coding agents or maybe other agents like, I don't know, Claude Cowork or so also exists. Yeah, it's kind of like the number before. If you haven't, great recommendation to try one of those. So the most popular options would probably be Claude Code for sure, the commercial one. We have Open Code, and there's like a big number of others. There are other projects that go a little bit overboard with the integrations you can build. The one I mentioned earlier that I will not name here. Have a look. There's also like integrations in IDEs like Cursor. You have GitHub Copilot, and you can feed agent skills to basically all of them at this point. Agent skills are basically contextual descriptions, usually written in Markdown, that describe what an agent can be capable of. There are a lot of like constructs around that, progressive discovery, where an agent kind of like can drill down into skill specializations and stuff. But sky is the limit, essentially. So whatever you can tell an agent to do, you can also package as a set of skills and have these skills basically discoverable. Yeah, thank you. Codex is also a good thing. We have dozens of agent skills already prepared for you, and it's constantly growing. MG is like tirelessly working on these things. And there are also a bunch of x402 skills. So you can add these skills to the coding agent of your choice. I will like maybe give you in a private discussion my opinion on whatever this is, which reminds me, if you have development questions, please come to our Discord. That's really the best place to ask developer questions. Misha, can you put the link in the chat? It's discord.gg/Algorand. So it's kind of really straightforward. And there's an agentic coding channel, especially for those questions. And you will find myself there, you will find MG, and a lot of other people who are experienced in Algorand and experienced, if you can say that, in AI development, but definitely everyone is like trying to ramp up on these things. And of course, we've mentioned that a couple of times, and I'm very sorry if you're not a developer and you didn't have contact with that. We have MCP servers. MCP stands for Model Context Protocol. That's like in the AI world, kind of one of the oldest standards to provide functionality to AI functionality, like agents, for example, but it can also be just something else that runs in a loop, which probably also be called an agent nowadays. And those are kind of like functionalities that allow your agent to call an API, essentially. It's a bit oversimplified, but that's essentially it under the hood. If you've been on the Algorand documentation in the last maybe over a year, you will have seen that there's a little button at the bottom corner that is called Ask AI that will pop up a chat window where you can ask any question to a chatbot that will answer with the knowledge of the documentation. And the service we're using for that is called Kappa AI, and Kappa also provides an MCP server for the same results. So you can provide this. There is this link here that guides you to how you would integrate that in the agent of your choice in our documentation portal. There is a let's call it a unified or a discovery platform for documentations that is called Context 7 that also contains a set of different Algorand documentations. Some of them are maybe not the official ones, so be careful with that one. The Kappa AI is trained on our own documentation, and we try to keep it very recent. And to make it easier for you to start any project on Algorand that you would usually start with AlgoKit. There are workshops where we talk about AlgoKit, where you would do things the old-fashioned way by hitting your keys on the keyboard and like get an Algorand project out of the door quickly, or like at least spin up the development environment, a lot of assistive tooling, local development environments, Dockerized, locally running blockchain and stuff. And we wrapped all of these things, the AlgoKit functionality, plus the agent skills and a pre-configured set of MCP servers with a tool called VibeKit by my colleague from the DevRel team of the Algorand Foundation, Gabe, who unfortunately could not be here with us because he is at East Denver. Like when you are in the crypto world, you probably know that this is happening at the moment. And yeah, he is very passionately and actively working on this project called AlgoKit. You can VibeKit, AlgoKit of course as well, and you can get VibeKit at getvibekit.ai. We can talk about that, Ludo. Yes. Then this is early days. It's at version v0.15 or something like that, and we would like you to try that out. It guides you through a couple of questions and sets up like a complete project that is prepared for you to work with the AI agent of your choice. Has access to MCP servers. The agent will then guide you through the setup for the GitHub MCP server, for example, because we found out that for code examples, having access to the code examples that we keep fresh on GitHub is actually most beneficial. And we would like to get your feedback. I will spare you the demonstration because it's really literally like 5 seconds and 3 questions, and then you're good to go. But we would love to have your feedback. We are super excited about that, and it makes things super easy. It's batteries included, but no guarantees at this point. So it's an experimental project that lives under the DevRel organization from the Algorand Foundation. And the results we have seen so far are very promising, and we would like to hear your experience with that. Thank you.
Marco, thank you very much. That's a really nice presentation. I can attest. Last year we had a hackathon here in Berlin, and we had very nice, I think, people. It was quite easy to build an Algorand. I'll actually share the presentation so that everyone has all the links, and they can also start vibe coding an Algorand. So next would be Gulcha and me about our what's next for the Algorand community in Berlin.
Yeah. Hi, everyone, and thank you very much to my colleagues for making this journey nice today about x402. And I'm excited to walk you through today our Berlin Hackathon and community roadmap for H1. And we try to build a comprehensive activation here around 2 core technology teams like x402 and AI agent. Yeah, and we had this meeting today, and we will have another online workshop about x402. Some of our events will be live, some of them are going to be virtual, but the next one is on the 5th. We would like to kick off with an ideathon before the hackathon in April. So we would like to introduce builders to this payment stardust and generate innovative use cases together with you. As my colleagues mentioned that it's still open platform, like it is open space, so we need to find out like what kind of use cases we can build on together. And this is also gonna give participants for hackathon some time to explore the technology beforehand. And then our hackathon is gonna happen April 10th to 12th, so it's like 3 days, 50 hours hackathon. And then we will go into another ideathon for our next hackathon. It's going to be about more generic AI agents and agentic commerce. Yeah, in June, we will have the next hackathon for the builders to create their real world applications. Let me see. Where are we? Yeah. Throughout this period, we will be also running different programs for if you feel like you're in a different stage. So we will launch our startup challenges. Dates are gonna be announced soon, but we are aiming to launch the program around May. And if you have already your idea and if you already prototype, this could be a good place to see if your ideas are fitting in a blockchain and Web3. And Well, yeah, we will be also launching soon again or opening our accelerator program. And this year, Algorand Foundation is going to put 1.5 million funds pool for the startups, for the projects that are on the mainnet and getting traction, so a little bit more matured, to help them out to bring their projects live and yeah, continue building. So I think that's from my side. If you have any questions about the community and all these events, you can reach out to me or Misha.
Well, thank you very much. So actually, we are building this community kind of on the footsteps of a previous hackathon, which we held in third quarter of last year. I think it was September, October. I think there was a very nice hackathon, which a lot of people enjoyed in W3 Hub. Hopefully, some of you have also participated in that hackathon. And we would like to support more builders. I think for this year, Algorand decided to put more resources behind Berlin and supporting the local community here, which I think is really, really cool. And I think Algorand is a chain which is really interesting in terms of that provides actually very usable rails for you to make a startup. And especially with these developments of x402 or x402, however you would name it. So I will dive into a little bit here. So what to build? The idea is that Algorand is a generic blockchain. So basically you can build a lot of things. We're really not planning to limit anyone. But of course, if you are building something, there are some things we can support more than others. And I'll delve a little bit into that. I think basically 2026 is kind of shaping up to be a year of agents. At least I think the LMs have becoming more agents. So this is one of the things which we would like to promote this year. And so these are some of just ideas what you could build and what we would also love to be to see in being built. So the payments and agentic commerce. So basically, it kind of goes into four big kind of blocks, being AI agents and agentic commerce. So agents paying each other, being able to access money, and so on. B2B payments, P2P payments, and merchant acceptance. So here, kind of like a list of some potential things which can be built. But I think that's the interesting part is that there's a lot of these things that have not been discovered, and there's a very, very wide space of what to be built. So here, just some kind of ideas of what we would like to be seen built, what we would like to support. But please do feel free to kind of have your ideas out there. And the only thing I think what is interesting is that this year is kind of shaping up to be a year where actually you can build like a startup from relatively few resources. And that's what we'd like to, and also support here, that you could kind of build in this new field, which is still not cluttered with competitors. And there's, I think, a very big range of things still to be built. So for the next two events, which we're holding, we would like you to register. Here are some actually Voluma links to them if you feel free to check them out. So actually there's two events for the Ideathon, x402 Ideathon, which is how will happen basically in a little bit more than 2 weeks. It will be on site here in Berlin at 402 Berlin. It's the coding school. So it will be around 4 hours for you to sit down, find your teammates, kind of ideate, figure out what you want to like build, not to build it, just to kind of have like figure out what can be built, what is required, and make a pitch deck, a slide deck, and present it. So for that Ideathon, actually we'll have 1,000 USDC of prizes, of a prize pool. So, and actually I think it's a perfect place also to validate your idea. If I think a lot of the hackathons have become kind of in a way like kind of a time to have fun. But I think what we would like to turn these hackathons more into places where builders can come, they can like validate their ideas, they can meet teammates, and they can actually build something which makes sense. I just admit, here's someone. So that's going to be the Ideathon. So do please register if you are available. Then after that, we'll have Agentic Commerce x402 hackathon. So that will be, as Gülşah mentioned, that will be for 50 hours. It will also be in person here in Berlin. So there will be tracks for, let's say, novice builders and also for senior builders. So that's what we're expecting to basically kind of attract. If you're already building something, if you already have some startup and you think that Algorand and x402 would be a good fit, do please come. Also, do join. And also for new builders who you don't have to be discouraged if you still don't have an idea. It's a great place to kind of meet your fellow builders and try to hack something if you don't even have much knowledge in this area. As Marco mentioned, there's a lot of vibe coding tools which also work very, very well. So these are Bloom links, but you'll have them actually in the future. This is our Telegram chat. So this is like kind of a center point for the Berlin community. So please do, if you would like to join, scan it. And we have also all the links to all the resources will be there. There's a special channel there for events. So you can also register for events. They'll all will be there. So thank you very much for listening. But I think we also wanted to kind of have a little brainstorming session. Marco, would you like, because I think that's kind of the interesting part here is about the x402 is that there's a lot of use cases. Some of the use cases kind of quite obvious, but some use cases I think are quite not obvious. So just wanted to kind of see if anyone also had any ideas on what they would like to build or what they think could be built. I personally, I'm setting up my OpenClaw. I think some people will be against it, but it is up there running. And my OpenClaw needs to pay for things. And I kind of think that although it's maybe very experimental and very unsafe, it's a really nice way to kind of try like agents. And I think the OpenClaw does need like its own kind of way to pay for things. So that would be one of the things which I would be interested in kind of having like my OpenClaw, having a little wallet and being able to pay for things. And also for different LLM models, for example, like I think like there's all the time new LLM models are coming out, and some are free, some are expensive, some kind of have different use cases. So for example, that would be kind of, I think, one of the use cases for me. I'm
right on the other side of this. There are so many OpenClaw instances running that I would want to build something that those bots want to buy.
Yes, exactly.
And to the vibe coding, very intentionally, my agent slide was called agentic engineering, because that's the new term that is coined for the professional version of vibe coding. And I recommend, if you have programming experience, look into that term and go into that direction. You can still use all those tools. You just have to have a better idea of what's happening underneath. And if you want to integrate x402, that's the way to go, I would say. Of course, you can vibe code, and those skills actually also help you vibe code this properly. That's what we saw in one of the former hackathons, that vibe coding in an environment like Algorand, where we improved so rapidly in our tooling that information is sometimes outdated when you don't provide like these skills. I think I would build something that one of those bots can use for sure. And maybe a generic thing that you can integrate into your server that dynamically calculates prices for API calls or something like that. I would definitely be on the vendor side.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a very good marketplace where actually you can make businesses where can be discovered by agents and use this, not just for definitely, I think for the other side also.
Yeah, and for that, guys, you're in luck, because one of the template packages made available for x402 and through the links that we just delivered to everybody is actually a dynamic price x402 resource server, which everybody can immediately put into work, add something around it, and use it for a bot. So the majority of the code for an actual dynamically priced resource server is already there. Just grab it and put it to work.
Yeah, perfect. Kind of in a way, a little bit like maybe a credit card for an agent.
Yeah, why not?
As you can see, sorry, like
please.
for the other people here, so we would be happy to hear your ideas. And as you can see, there's so much room. It's still early days, and you are like you're the early adopters, or what? There's one cohort before the early adopters, right? Like pioneers or something like that. I forgot. And we are just stating the obvious, like ideas you find all over the internet, and there are use cases, sophisticated use cases. Like, just don't think about in terms of what can I build with x402. Think about what problems you face, and the most annoying ones. Think about how could something like this fit in there. Solve problems first.
Yes, I think that's a very good also point that for the projects we really hope that the Algorand Berlin community will be able to use kind of these events and also the support. There's quite a lot of support behind for, I think, this year. To kind of build basically startups, build something which has a real use case. We have a question. Let me.
Yeah, you have a question.
Unmute you. Let me unmute you just a second. Yes. You would have to unmute yourself.
Yes, I'm Gabor Lipovsky. Thank you very much for giving me this possibility to ask something. So we heard about the great facilities of Algorand. But you know, Algorand is really undervalued now. I mean that the Algorand Foundation supports all these staking. So the real value of Algorand, the real price of Algorand would be 10 or 100 times as much as now it is, if it wants to be self-sustaining. And if you consider it, for example, a 1 USDC Algorand price, then microtransactions or nano-transactions are not possible. So you need some account abstraction as well here, like Base level 2. And to build a level 2 account abstraction is a huge, huge work. What do you think about it, Marco or MG? That's a question.
Yes, that's a very complex question. And that's a question for another day, to be honest.
Yes, thank you. Then another question, and that will be the last. When will be Algorand really quantum ready? It's not very important because quantum computers will be 10 years or 20 years away from now, but the verifiable random function is not yet quantum ready. It's elliptic curve cryptography, so I don't think it is quantum ready now. And it is a question to Mr. Varma. Mr. Varma, yes, he told us that Algorand is now essentially quantum ready. Not at all. No, it isn't.
So, yeah, thank you for the question. What I was trying to say is that we are quantum proof, not quantum ready. Maybe I
yes. Okay.
misspoke.
Thank you. Thank you. Then I understand. Yes.
Yeah. So I meant to say that we are quantum proof, but again, the quantum question keeps coming back, and there is an engineering team which is working day and night to be able to make sure that we'll be quantum ready.
I wasn't quite attentive. Sorry. And the
No,
last
it was nice. Maybe I misspoke.
Success would be a pathetic belly flop in the case of Algorand. Why? You had a commercial buying ice cream with Algorand. And I asked ChatGPT how many ice creams are sold a day, and answered me that approximately 400 million ice creams. So all the ice creams would be on Algorand blockchains. Then it would mean that only by selling ice creams on Algorand, it would take 4,000 transactions per sec. So you see, if it would be really a success for microtransactions, then Algorand would be overwhelmed in a second. I mean, in days. I wish you such a huge success that you had, instead of 5 transactions per second, 10,000 transactions per second. But if this idea of 402 would be really a great success, then you would need some account abstraction, I think.
May I just have some say on these questions? For your first question, I need to assert that number one, the value of the native currency does not have anything to do with the power of the spending on x402 because it is based on mostly based on the based on the stable coins, and it doesn't have any effect on how you can spend and transact with the stable coins, no matter how much the actual value of the main native currency is. And actually, it does benefit it because the fees which are taken care of by the facilitators are so much lower than anybody would be willing to run a facilitator or host a facilitator for those chains, because one of the major axioms of how successful a blockchain would be in terms of x402 is the cost. And the low value of the Algorand makes it actually the perfect payment rail for the facilitators who are actually sponsoring all of the fees to do it more oftenly and for more huge volumes of transactions. If I am a facilitator and I want to take care of a transaction on Solana, I need to pay $1,000. But on Algorand, it's $10,000, which actually makes me 10 times more efficient as a facilitator. So this is for the first one. For the second one, you mentioned that 5 transactions. It is not true. Algorand, in very, very bad day, has between 10,000 to 12,000, and under pressure, based on proof load testings that we ran, and which were durable, not only for some seconds, it ran through a complete day. It can tolerate 25,000 transactions without any failure, without failed transactions of Solana, and without fake anything bubbled in order to make that amount high. So yes, transaction can actually happen for all the ice cream sold in the world, right on Algorand, plus everything else. Algorand can tolerate it. And finally, for the third part of the question, I need to assert just one thing. The x402 is very young, actually, and such all other things around it, they are growing on any blockchain, Algorand included, but Algorand is the most efficient and reliable candidate for huge amounts of transactions which are required for x402. And finally, for quantum proof, there are 3 aspects. Number one, the consensus, as you mentioned, the VRF is part of consensus, which needs the quantum resistance to be applied to. But 2 other aspects which are not available for other blockchains are already available for Algorand. These are the history of the chain and the quantum resistant accounts. These 2 are completely available for Algorand. Majority, more than 95% of other blockchains doesn't have these 2. The only the only last step, which is the consensus, this is the only remaining step. And again, it's a growing process. All of others are trying to make it happen. Us too, very heavily, but we are ahead of everybody else in this terms because we already have quantum proof accounts and quantum resistant accounts and quantum resistant history of chain. All needs to be done is the VRF, which we are working tirelessly on it, and hopefully we can achieve that sooner than other blockchains, as this is Algorand way.
May I jump in? So I would like to focus on the potential of x402, right? So I'm neither an economist nor am I an applied cryptographer. And I had these discussions with other people that are much smarter than I am. And there were already a lot of assumptions in what you said. And just those couple of seconds that we have here, or minutes, they're not enough to actually state all the facts that would be needed for the people who are uninvolved to actually decide who is in the right here, right? So we should have this discussion at some other more specialized place. So I don't think this is good here. And I say we probably don't have, or Algorand probably doesn't have the ambition to process all the ice cream transactions in the world. But when we get to that point, I think that would be a very good problem to have.
Thank you very much, MG, for your answer. What I would like to say, this 402 initiative is great, but at the same time, to get Algorand self-sustaining, the real price would be 10 or 100 times as much as now. And that would simply dissolve your 10 times more efficiency, what you mentioned.
We'll get there. You're not in a rush. You're not from the start and from the beginning. Algorand is not interested in hype prices, or that crypto game that is going on out there, fake values and things. We are getting things step by step, and by targeting the enterprise sector and the real value by the real world assets and so on and so forth. I think this gradual process is a process when you want to make things reliable and not just a hype and bubble boom, which makes you a millionaire during a day and tomorrow millions of people go bankrupt. You need to take things step by step, gradually make every one of your steps calculated and count for. This is how Algorand is taking the steps. And yeah, we will get to high prices as well, one step at a time.
Thank you.
Thank you, MJ. Actually, for me, I've been kind of in Web3 since 2017, and for me, I think the interesting part for x402, it steps out a little bit out of Web3 bubble, and actually provides native payment rails, which are useful, I think, for everyone. And I think that's a very nice part of it, but because it's actually a real use case. As well, not as God intended to, but as Mark Andreessen intended to, and by being one of the kind of like founders of first browsers, I think it does say that a lot. But kind of economy on the internet evolved into being basically just ad-based economy, where here there's actually a way to pay for things online. Yeah, so if anyone has any questions, any follow-up comments, do please feel free to raise your hand. Other than that, we will be sure to also wrapping up because we've already reached our milestone. Thank you for some comments. Rafa, nice for brainstorming. Ludo is asking about the quantum account security. Yes, I think that's a question which potentially was already somewhat answered. I may be wrong. Peter says, thank you for the good webinar. Very nice x402 introduction. Yep, I think this the question about the quantum account security, that could be definitely taken into the Discord. It's a bit more bigger question. Yes, so just to mention everyone, so do please join the Telegram group if you would like to, because this is where we'll have all the resources, all the dates about the hackathons, idea funds, and also all the resources you can get from there. And yes, we'll make the recording available to everyone if you're registered in Luma, so we'll send that in a follow-up. So then thank you very much. Thank you, Marco, MJ, Dr. Nikhil Varma, Gulsha, thank you very much for staying up so late. And hopefully we'll have a nice next idea-thon where you can also come with your ideas and actually win some also money, because if I qualify.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.